Hi, and welcome to the McGregor Dementia Support Ministry Podcast, a podcast providing relevant resources to those currently walking the dementia journey with their loved ones. Today's podcast is a session recorded from our Alzheimer's and Dementia Seminar held here at McGregor Baptist Church on February 18th, 2024. Today's session is a Q&A panel discussion where several of our seminar speakers joined me on the stage to answer questions about dementia that were given to us from the audience. Cynthia, I'm going to start with you because I know you're not afraid to give us an answer, right? Okay, this person writes in, says, dealing with a 96-year-old who still drinks and forgets he's drinking so much. How do I handle this?
You empty the bottle and you put fake stuff in it. That's bottom line.
There you go.
That was easy. Thank you for an easy one.
Okay, well, I'm glad you thought that was easy. All right. Don, I'm going to turn over to you, so pass the mic. This person asked about getting help into the home. They need assistance with a husband that has been recently diagnosed. So what are some of the steps in getting that help into the home that one might need? And put the mic up nice and close to you there.
I'm going to keep it simple because I think that what is most important is starting small. You don't have to necessarily upset the apple cart and just fix everything, or think you can. But starting small is a really good place to begin. I also think educating yourself as to what kinds of or flavors of help at home there are is very important. It's not one size fits all. Everybody has their own things that work for them. And starting early is probably the most important thing. Just really beginning early on before things are really challenging is so much easier, not only on the caregiver who has the capability to delegate and understand what they might need, but also it helps with the person that they're providing care to be open to accepting help from not just their care provider, but somebody from the outside.
All right, thank you, Don. Just hand that to Amy because I'm going to ask Amy a question. And this question is is there a way to detect early stages of dementia which runs in the family? And they're getting around toward the genetic aspect. And I'm sure the question that comes up a lot with this is the ApoE4 gene and different things that we're hearing a lot in the news and the media about this. So what are some of the things that would help somebody if they were curious about genetic testing as it relates to Alzheimer's?
Well, that's a great question because many times I do hear, Alzheimer's one's in our family, does that mean I'm going to get it? One of the things that we do know is that there are different types of genes. So, for example, they're what we call deterministic genes. So if you have that gene, a deterministic gene, it is going to impact and you will be impacted by the disease. So think about it that way. Risk genes, on the other hand, and risk genes are very common for Alzheimer's disease. So there are a lot of different ways to think about genetic testing. But here's number one, that's a conversation with your primary care practitioner. But here's a few things to think about. Just because you have an individual in your family with Alzheimer's disease, for example. Some dementias have a stronger familial component, frontotemporal dementia, for example. But with Alzheimer's disease, if you have a first-order relative, parent, biological sibling, yes, you do have a higher risk. We can't specifically quantify that now, but from a general perspective, if you think about it, if you have more than one first-order relative, yes, your risks are a little bit higher. The number one risk for Alzheimer's disease is age. And this disease impacts women 2/3 more than it does men. So there are many, many factors. What I encourage people to do, a couple things, because I think it's reasonable to expect that if you do have a family member who's had Alzheimer's disease, just like many other diseases that we deal with, it makes sense for you to start getting a baseline memory screen so you know where you are at. You don't know how far you've come if you don't know where you started. So I think it's particularly important for those of us who may have a family member who's had the disease to start being proactive, get your memory screens, and also investigate the things that you can do to keep yourself healthy. There are a number of things that I bet many of you are doing. So, yes, it is a concern. I would absolutely, though, have you discuss that with your primary care practitioner. It is not something that we necessarily recommend. I think that you need to really kind of search your soul and decide and talk to those medical professionals to see if that's right for you. The other thing to consider is if you choose to go down that pathway, what are you going to do with that information? So that's another consideration as well. And again, everyone's individual, but hopefully that helps give you a little bit of perspective.
Thank you so much, Amy. And by the way, as they're answering, if there's anything you want to add, feel free to get my attention. Otherwise, I'll move on to another question. Lance, our longtime veteran of the seminar, all six. So I'm going to ask you kind of a real basic question that came up was, okay, I've just had a loved one diagnosed. What are some legal considerations? What are some of the first step things that might be, and I know you probably talked about this in your breakout, but a lot of folks didn't get to hear that. So what would be some of the first things that they want to make sure they have in place?
So, and I would broaden it just a little bit to say, certainly first diagnosis, that's always a time when it puts it on our radar screen. But even if your loved one has more impairments, there's lots of room in that continuum as to you can still take action and protect yourself. And the big thing is having appointing, and we heard Dr. Mast say, pick who is going to be there and part of your team going forward. So doing powers of attorney, doing medical decision making, we call that healthcare surrogates in Florida. But the idea is create your team, and so that is your choice, and it avoids the more intrusive systems of our society. I mean, the courts can help in many ways, but boy, is it inefficient and costly. So to pick your team and get them on board, that's the thing to do, even with some diagnosed impairments.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Mast, I've given you a chance to take a breath there. You've been doing a lot of talking. Let's see, which question was I going to ask you here? Okay. What are some things that people can? You have a whole chapter in your book on prevention. And I know we had a little bit of discussion on this when you were on the podcast with me, but what are some things that are out there today? And Amy alluded to that just a minute ago, that, taking care of ourselves, but what are some specific things that if someone's here right now that they don't have any signs yet, but they want to do some things in a positive direction toward prevention, what are some of those ideas and thoughts out there?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So there's a couple things to think about. So one is when we talk about prevention of Alzheimer's disease, we're really talking about delay. And we're trying to push it out so that the onset won't be as early. So that might not sound very exciting, but if we could delay the onset of Alzheimer's by 5 years, we'd cut the number of people who had it in half. In terms of the prevention science, it's actually growing pretty well, but a lot of it is pretty common sense, right? So you need physical exercise, and the literature suggests that is some cardiovascular exercise, what's good for your heart and lungs, is good for your brain, but also strength training as we get older. You don't need to go bench press and pump a bunch of iron, but you do need to do things to strengthen your muscles. That will also help with things like frailty. Second is to stay cognitively, intellectually engaged. You do not have to buy Lumosity. You don't have to do crossword puzzles, jigsaw puzzles, unless you really enjoy them. But you do need to find ways to engage your mind, continue to challenge yourself to stay active mentally. But please find it in a way that you enjoy, because that will make it stick longer, and the effect isn't so powerful that if you hate it, it's worth doing, okay? Third thing is to stay socially engaged. So there is a research finding that's pretty reliable that people who are lonely and isolated have higher risk of things like Alzheimer's disease. We don't know exactly why it is. It's not due to depression or other negative emotion, but something about being engaged in a social network with other people has a preventative effect. 4, what is good for your heart is good for your brain. So if you have heart problems or you have high blood pressure, diabetes, the like, please stay in touch with your healthcare provider, follow their recommendations, and do everything that you can do to promote heart health. The other one to consider is a healthy diet. We've gone back and forth in the research on this. Sometimes it's the Mediterranean diet, sometimes it is another. I think we all understand what a healthy and an unhealthy diet looks like. So the healthier you can eat, the better effect. The last one, which is a link that has emerged in more recent reviews, is untreated hearing loss. So it's harder for the brain to process information when you can't hear well, and there is an association. What's unclear is if hearing aids and treatment of that modifies the effect, but it is something that's been linked to the onset of dementia.
Yeah.
So,
thank you very much. Cynthia, how to be sure I'm doing the right thing at the right time in terms of long-term care. They wrote it backwards there. Yeah, long-term care.
So I want to talk to you about that, but I want to give you what you just said in a nutshell. Do what your parents told you to do when you were younger. None of this is new stuff, right? I mean, it's get outside and exercise, go get some friends, eat the food I put on the table. So anyway, I always say, if you want to know, just go back. What did your mother tell you? So how do you know if you're doing the right thing around long-term care? One of the things you need to think about is the right thing is what's really the best thing for the family that is involved. It's not just for one person. It's not just for you. It's not just for your loved one with the disease. It's for your entire family. And that entire family in my situation was my husband, my almost adult children. I had one in college. I had one going to a boarding school. I was an employer and had several people that I managed. They were a part of my family. So I had to figure out what was going to work, not right, but was best for all of those people that were involved, as well as my father. And so what is only good for your father may not be what's good for the entire family unit. So you want to always be thinking about that. I used to think of it in a way of my father and mother had done many things to help my sister and I to be successful. They had sacrificed a lot in their lives for their children. And if my father had been asked when he was 40, 50 years old, hey, Dad, you know, you're going to get really sick one day, and I'm going to have to take my time away from my children and my family. I'm going to have to quit my job, which feeds my family and allows me to sacrifice for them so that they can go to these certain schools and do these certain things. And I'm going to do all of that. I'm going to leave my home that I have that's 1,500 miles away, and I'm going to move to take care of you because I think that's what's right. My dad would have said, you're crazy. Don't do that. Because he had given up so much for me. He would not have wanted me to give all of that up for him. Also, if you think about it from a financial standpoint, if you're a spouse, you're taking care of someone as a caregiver for a spouse, and the incidence, it's a higher percentage chance that the person who's caregiving is going to die before the person they're caring for. That's not good for anyone. It's not good for the person you're caring for. It's not good for you. It's not good for the rest of your family. Also, financially, you have to take care of yourself because you've got to be able to take care of the person you love. So finding out what's right or what is best is different for every single person and every single circumstance. But I encourage you to think about the whole village that's helping out and working. Think about your children. Think about yourself. Think about people that work for you or that you work for, and try to find something that fits for all of that.
Yeah, good. Don, here's the question. What's the best way to support my mom when making the hard decisions about my dad's ongoing and worsening diagnosis of dementia, also while having a mother-in-law that has aging dementia? So here's somebody that's going through it on two different fronts. So how could someone best support their mom when they're dealing with some of this kind of issues?
It's a challenge, but it's so important and such an honor to be able to be there for your parents and to support them. My mom's a caregiver, and so it's. I'm just going to keep it simple and say enlist the troops and help her enlist the troops, because it takes a village to really care for someone and to care for the caregiver. It's just as important. I have siblings and we all have certain gifts and skills. We all participate in supporting my parents. And I encourage other children to really do that. First of all, we need to understand what their wishes are and know what their preferences are and what they would want. That doesn't mean they get what they want, but it means that we can certainly try to help them get what they want, or something close to it. But we need to educate ourselves with what we're dealing with, understand the disease and the things that go with that disease, so we can understand and plan forward and help our mom plan forward. Provide respite. Take some things off your mom's plate so that she can spend more time being a wife instead of a caregiver, and they can enjoy quality time together. For my mom, visiting regularly, phone calls regularly really make a big difference, because it allows for her to have something, just a life and a conversation that's apart from the caregiving stuff. And then if you don't live close by and you don't have the manpower or aren't able to provide the support yourself, consider hiring a professional, a care manager or a care team that can help do what you aren't able to do if you're at a distance, or help you to understand what resources are available near your parents that you can help her tap into, so that she can give good care to your dad, but also to really support herself.
Good. Thank you, Don. Amy, this is a question that I was very interested in. They ask, is AI, which we hear a lot about that, is it being incorporated in research as it relates to Alzheimer's disease, and any examples if it is?
Well, that's a fabulous question I don't know the answer to. And the reason I don't, it doesn't mean I can't find out the answer, because if you think about it, AI is a brand new, wide open field. There's some amazing things happening. There's some things that might be a little bit scary as well. So I would say, without a non-researched answer, I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't places where AI will be able to help guide us in terms of appropriate protocol, again, based on the disease entity, and not just in clinical trials for individuals with memory loss, but think about all of the different medical conditions that there are clinical trials ongoing all of the time, which is really exciting. So, again, can't give you the specifics, but I'm gonna bet that there really will be. If there are not now, there will be more and more, because we want to take advantage of every qualified and, again, quantifiable and replicatable technology that will assist us in addressing some of these conditions. Dr. Mast, I know you had I saw you there, so please add to it.
So it seems like, and it is true, that AI is everywhere already. And I've been stunned at the number of applications that I'm starting to see in the dementia and older adult space. all the way from AI being used to track the way people push buttons on their dishwasher to track changes in functioning, to early detection, to prediction of who will decline faster, training of direct care nursing home staff through AI, virtual reality applications. It seems like everywhere in the university you turn around, no matter what people are doing, they're also doing AI with it. And I don't know how to feel about that either, but some of the applications that I've seen could actually reduce human burden in some important ways. So one of the things I do professionally is I do memory testing with older adults, and no one enjoys it, right? They don't want to be tested. You don't probably want to spend 2-3 hours testing either. But there are people who are starting to say, couldn't we, develop an AI algorithm to reduce some of this testing burden? It shouldn't take the human out of the equation. I would hate that. But people are working on that now. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Do you have something, Cynthia?
I know that there is a product that I have seen recently that doesn't necessarily have to do with Alzheimer's, but it could. There's a community that I'm aware of that's installing flooring that judges the gait as someone's walking down the hall, and it can identify through AI that this person is becoming a fall risk.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of things that you just never even thought of that are coming.
Yeah, it's gonna really revolutionize medicine and so many other things. Yeah, Lance, this is what's one thing I'm not thinking about that I should be thinking about in this area as it relates, because I think there's, whether they're dealing with a very specific situation as a caregiver, or maybe they're just here for more information, but as I'm getting into that older years, what's one thing I'm not thinking about that I need to be concerned about or working toward?
I haven't thought of
or
that.
two.
Actually.
Oh, you haven't?
Yeah, no.
What's something you deal with a lot there at the practice?
Right. So probably the two things. One is either they come to me after all of their resources have already been consumed. They spent all the money. The simple, and then they say, "Okay, now I need to find help." And where much of that, more things could have been brought into the mix and more solutions would have been available if that was considered while there was still resources. And part of that is the idea that I can't get help until I run out of my own ability to help or do myself. We are an independent kind of minded nation, and then that's also the same concept of getting advice or information first. And you guys are all breaking that mold because you're here gathering information. But I have clients come to me and they say, well, we just transferred the house and we just did this, and because we're going to protect the assets. And there's lots of ways you can protect assets, but oftentimes it's counterintuitive. And so the very thing that you thought would help actually caused the problem. And so the classic is, Mom just gave me her house, and now we want to help. So it's just learning all of the breadth of information and going to people, whether it's medical and providers, lawyers, doctors. Just get that earlier on is the best thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was kind of thinking that, because we have gone through that several years ago, and I know you gave us a lot of great wisdom in that area that I would have had no idea of what could be done. So yeah, protecting assets and doing those things while you still have them, and while they still have them, and you can still do something. This question just in. This was just delivered. But it was sort of one that I asked you, Cynthia, but I'll say this one again because it must be important because Kim brought it to me. One of the most difficult decisions is when to transition their loved one from home to a care facility. What are your thoughts?
There's a saying in this business, the business that I'm in, that it's better to be 5 years too early than 5 minutes too late. So there's, again, not a best time, but what we encourage our clients to think about is don't move your loved one when you've done everything you can do at home and when they've fallen over and over and over again, and now you've thrown your hands up. And so you're moving them on a stretcher. You're moving them into a place at their worst, instead of moving them into a place at maybe their almost best, where they can enjoy and benefit from the activities that are there, from the people that are there that are like them, from the things that are going on. I regularly deal with adult children who say, my father was the CEO of X, Y, and Z. He will never want to play bingo, and he will never want to do the hokey pokey, okay? And I go with my clients, see clients, and I go and I sit with them, and I do the hokey pokey with them. And the CEOs and the non-CEOs are having a big time doing the hokey pokey. But it's because it's something that they can enjoy and that they can do in the level that they are. And we still remember them as the CEO. We still remember them as the head of the household. We still remember who that person was, but in a community setting where they're with people that are like them, they get to enjoy things that they can enjoy that maybe we weren't thinking to do the hokey pokey. And when we didn't think about it, we also didn't think to add scarves to it, because that's a lot of fun with putting the scarf in and taking the scarf out. And so I say it's better to go sooner rather than later. You want to go when they can enjoy it. I also equate it to my life. I was a New Yorker for decades, and I was going to die in Florida. Well, I'm glad I got to Florida before it was time for me to die, because I got to build my peer group. I got to see what was here, and I'm going to tell you, it added some more time to my life because I'm in this really great situation. It's the same way with moving to a community, whether it's memory care or assisted living. Go before it's too late. Go when you can enjoy it. Go when your loved one can enjoy it, because it's, again, better to be early than to be late.
All right, good answer. Dr. Matson, I'm going to ask you this question, and you touched on some of this in your talk, but the question is: the anger, irrational, unprovoked outbursts, the resentment, hostility, nasty words that the family member with dementia has toward the caregiver, how can the caregiver avoid feeling the pain and torment and hurt and the emotional, really almost abuse that is caused by this?
That's a really tough one. There's a lot of different pieces to that. And one of the challenges of these types of behavior problems is you often don't know why it's happening, right? And it feels like the person has maybe changed the way they felt about you, or something has changed with them. You know, sometimes you get this type of irritability and outburst because the person no longer understands what you're trying to do. Sometimes they do it because they are in pain and they can no longer tell you. Sometimes they have a urinary tract infection and they have a delirium on top of their dementia, and they really need to go to the doctor to get it checked out. This wasn't the question, but anytime even somebody with dementia experiences a very rapid, dramatic change, please call the doctor. Don't assume just because they have Alzheimer's disease, there's nothing that you can do. As to how you manage those feelings and the potential abuse, I think those are two pieces that might be related, right? So, sometimes we will say in the field, it's the disease, it's not them. But that only goes so far if you're actually being hurt, right? Whether with words or with hands or things that are being thrown. And if you're in an abusive situation and you're a caregiver, please call and get some help. Don't go about this on your own, whether it's to the doctor or a local service provider. You might feel guilty about doing it, but as a number of the other panelists have said, if you're in danger and something happens to you, what benefit will you be able to be to the person who needs your help? So it can be really difficult to try to understand why the person is doing it. But I would say, go back to where you were, at least in your mind, when the relationship was better, and try to remember how the person felt about you and the way that they treated you. Now, the sad truth is some relationships have been like that a long time, right? People are in abusive long-term relationships, and now they're in a situation like that with dementia. Again, I would hate for you to be isolated and without options to be able to talk it through. So it can be a big step, but reaching out to somebody that you trust. If you're part of a church, if you're part of this church, I bet you could talk with one of your pastors. So those are just some thoughts. I understand it's very difficult, and there's oftentimes not an easy answer to those things, but hopefully those are some things that you can think through.
Yeah. Well, we are over our time limit, so thank y'all panelists so much. Good answers. All right. Y'all can find a seat, and we're going to wrap up our time together. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please subscribe to this channel if you've not already done so, and to leave a review if you found this content helpful.